Hello everybody. This is going to be a little bit different video. No music this time. Whether that's good or bad is up to you. But I wanted to talk about this guitar that I picked up recently on Facebook Marketplace. It is a Favilla classical guitar. The model is C8. Built in 1965, and as you can kind of see, it's got some issues. We'll get into that a little bit later. And but first I want to talk a little bit about the Favilla company. Most of you probably not familiar with that name. They were a American company that built instruments from around 1890 to the early 70s. So for much of their history, they were primarily did small volume. In the early days, they would build anything from mandolins to guitars to balalaikas. They had a storefront, and most of their sales were either custom builds or instruments that they made to sell in their store. They did sell some out to other stores, and I think with the balalaikas they actually exported some of those to Russia, believe it or not. But in the middle part of the 19th century, they ramped up production a little bit off and on. It was a family business. It was two brothers in the early days, and then there were two brothers involved in the latter days, most notably Herc Favilla, and Herc is short for Hercules, and Herc took over right around 1960. And that's when they really tried to ramp up production, and but even then at their height, they were only producing like 3,600 guitars a year. But they made very high quality instruments. In the middle part of the 19th century especially, they were kind of trying to go after the Martin market, meaning that they were making guitars that would appeal to people who had the money to buy a Martin guitar. So they used very high quality materials, like this has a Sitka spruce top, mahogany back and sides, Brazilian rosewood saddle, and fretboard, although I think this is a replacement, and I'll get into that later. But these instruments are considered to be on par with the Martins that were made at the time. This particular model was made in 1965, but they're kind of flying under the radar. So they don't cost nearly as much as a vintage Martin would. Now the reason I know about these is because of their ukuleles, which have become very desirable. As most of you know, I'm a ukulele guy primarily, and a few years ago I started looking into Favilla ukuleles, and again they're considered to be on par with the Martins of whatever era they were made in. And those of the ukuleles are not really flying under the radar anymore as far as vintage ukulele buyers are concerned. They're very desirable. So the history lesson over. The reason I was able to acquire this is because it's in bad shape. And I was able to get it at a really low price. It was $125, which is less than it would have sold new back in 1965. But it has a number of issues. You have binding at several spots is coming apart from the body. So I'm going to need to repair that. On this side, someone's re-glued the binding like with copious amounts of glue. I'm not sure they knew what they were doing. When I first got this, there was a spot over here where there was just this big pile of glue on there. I don't know what they were doing, but I've since sanded that off. It has some cracks, some of which were repaired in the past. I have a scope that can look in here, and I'll try to put some pictures up here, superimpose them, showing you that like this crack has been repaired at one point. This big crack has been repaired at one point, but that has failed. There's a hairline split here right up the middle where the bookends match. It's not really separating, but I do want to seal that a little bit. But this is the bad one. This is it really has a lip here. It's kind of somewhat flush here, and then you can really feel it right there. So I got some work cut out for me. But oh, and I forgot the really disappointing thing is there's some water damage down here. You can see a little bit of it on the back here, and I don't know how much that's going to affect the tone. That could be a tone killer, I don't know. But more or less it's in pretty good shape. Like I say, I got the scope in here and looked around the braid. There's no braces getting loose. There's no separation at the neck. The neck is nice and straight. I actually strung up a couple strings to check out what the action would be like, and it was really low. Might be too low, but I suspect once I get 6 strings on there, the neck might pull up a little bit, and it hopefully will settle right in. But I'm just happy that I'm not going to have to, re-glue the saddle or try to straighten out the neck or any of that nonsense. So I mentioned earlier that I didn't think the fretboard was original, and the only reason I say that is that it is in pristine condition. It looks brand new. I don't really see any evidence of play wear on it, and there's no way this guitar lasted this long without there being some evidence of that. But it looks brand new, and the rest of the guitar has been beat to crap. I mean, there are marks and nicks and dings all over this thing, including the neck. I don't know how you do this, but I mean, it's almost as if they handed it to a 3-year-old and said, "Here, play with Grandpa's guitar." I don't know what the heck happened, but there are nicks and dings all over this thing. There is no way in hell that this could be the original one without having some kind of damage on it. There's just no way, because this guitar, unfortunately, at some point in its life was not treated well. It just wasn't, and that's going to stop with me. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is not original. It might be rosewood. It looks like it probably is, and it may affect the value of it, probably. But I'm not really buying this to resell. I'm buying it for myself. And the fact that it's new will probably make playing the instrument a lot easier. Maybe. I don't know. For someone who knows how to play, maybe not me. But that's why I don't think that is an original piece on this. So yeah, so I've got some repairs to do. I'll probably do some videos on documenting that. One final thing about the and the label is coming loose. I gotta glue that back down carefully. Another thing about the Favilla family is that even though, like a lot of small shops, they didn't keep really good records on a lot of things. During the Herc era, they did a lot better job of, they had serial numbers that actually had a logic to them, so they can tell you a little bit about the instruments and such. But even though the company has been out of business for like 50 years, the members of the Favilla family spend a lot of time answering questions from people who buy their instruments from the old company. In fact, there's a Facebook page. If you acquire one of these instruments and you have a question, there's a Facebook page, I think it's just called Favilla Guitars, where various family members will chime in and tell you, oh yeah, that was, I think that was made in, in the 60s or the 30s or whatever. And actually, Tom Favilla, who worked at the factory in his final days, is the most knowledgeable, and a lot of questions on the Facebook site are referred to Thomas Favilla. And so if you have questions, you can usually get them answered. One of the questions I had to do with these very ornate, let's get that, ornate tuning machines, which I've seen a lot of pictures of these instruments, and I'd never seen tuning machines like that. And I said, well, are these original? Did somebody replace them? And Tom came back a few days later and said, no, we use those as a backup to the normal ones. If we had a supply issue, we would use those instead of the ones that we would usually put on there. So I think it's kind of, I don't know what the word is, charming that this family feels so strongly about the heritage of this company that went out of business 50 years ago. And I forgot to mention why they went out of business. Well, after ramping up production in the 60s, this thing called the electric guitar exploded in popularity, and acoustic guitar sales plummeted. And having expanded and now not being able to sell the products, and they didn't have the resources to start an electric line, things just kind of started to degrade from there. They did, I think the domestic, mass production, if you can call it that, stopped in the early 70s, but Herc and Tom Favilla continued to make guitars for a decade or so after that. I think Thomas made guitars until the mid 80s, but it was just custom builds, so it was just only a handful a year. And there is a website that has some basic information about the Favilla company, and I'll put that down in the description. But that's about all I have for now. I was contemplating, the more I research the company, I think it's an interesting story, and I might do a video in the future about the history of the Favilla guitar company. Let me know if that's something you might be interested in seeing or hearing about, or if you think that's a terrible idea. Leave something in the comments. I do have some music videos coming up, so I'll be working on those. I'm still working a lot of hours, so my time is kind of stretched. And anyway, thank you. If you made it this far, I appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.